And we're live.
Good evening. Welcome to our Municipal Council agenda for Tuesday, December 14th, 2021. I'd like to welcome everybody and call this meeting to order at this time. Are there any declarations of interest from members of council? Councillor Roy DeClemente, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just an advisement, item P1 in the past, I have previously declared on file number 19T-08002, which is Yorkwood Homes, as their plan of subdivision abuts my property, but the lands that are remaining in the subdivision to be developed are not adjacent, and therefore the pecuniary interest that I once had no longer exists. I'm just giving an advisement that I have considered it and I do not have an interest. Thank you.
Thank you very much. With that, we'll move along to our land acknowledgement statement. The town of East Gwillimbury recognizes and acknowledges the lands originally used and occupied by the First Peoples of the Williams Treaty, First Nations, and other Indigenous peoples. And on behalf of council, I thank them for sharing this land. We would also like to acknowledge the Chippewas of Georgina Island First Nation as our closest First Nation community and recognize the unique relationship the Chippewas have with the lands and the waters of this territory. They are the water protectors and environmental stewards of these lands, and we join them in these responsibilities. Before we move on, I would like to acknowledge the recent natural disasters that have taken place in Canada and in the United States. Last month, British Columbia was impacted with extensive flooding, resulting in loss of life and serious damage to property and roads. And more recently, the devastating tornadoes that hit central and southern United States, resulting in loss of life, serious injury, and extensive damages. I share on behalf of council our thoughts and our prayers are with all who have felt the tragic impact of these occurrences and hope they find the strength needed to get through the difficult weeks ahead. Are there any announcements from members of council?
Madam, if I may?
Yes, sorry, Councillor Morton, go ahead, please.
Okay, I have been asked by some of the residents if they are able to ask questions when it comes time for members to be speaking about different things, or whether they should wait till the end of the evening.
I will turn that over to our clerk. She is the expert on having people speak with us in the evening remote. Go ahead, please.
Through you, Madam Mayor, our office hasn't received any registered speakers for tonight's meeting. However, if there are certain comments that members of the public would like to provide live, they can certainly email clerks@eastgwillimbury.ca or perhaps contact the town to provide those comments. If at this point we don't have a mechanism to advise them of how to join the meeting because we don't have their contact information.
Thank you.
Councillor Morton, I think in future, should we have people who speak to us up to maybe 5 o'clock today, that we could introduce them to our clerk and they would be able to have a process that they could join us. It's much more difficult when we are live at this point to try and bring them into our meeting. So I might suggest, if anyone else is listening as well, if our clerk is aware that someone wants to speak, by all means, at any point during the day before the council meeting, I'm sure that we can work with them so they're able to speak to us as well.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
There was someone else that had a question or a comment from council. Councillor Persicini, go ahead, please.
After listening to the news and seeing a lot of things that are changing rapidly, where are we going to be in January 15? Do we have any plans that how we're going to do if we lock down again? Any strategy, Mr. Webster or someone?
Councillor Persicini, we do have an update just following the community announcement. So I'll check and see if there's other members of council that have announcements, and then then we could move to item E, COVID-19 updates. Perhaps staff could assist you with that information then.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other comments or questions at this point? Seeing none, I will move to item E, and that's COVID-19 updates, and that's the administration memo, COVID-19 update 2021-20. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Councillor Persicini. I will concur with you entirely. Matters are rapidly changing, even hourly today, as we're aware. And York Region has announced a new medical officer of health who brings a wealth of experience. He yesterday issued quite a memorandum, public memorandum on this about case counts and the severity, how contagious this strain is, and offering his best advice is the third booster is the best protection that we have for all age groups. Our position is, Councillor Persicini, we want to have logic follow first, and the planned reopening we have has been gradual, very coordinated, and we haven't fixed a date to when we're going to fully reopen our facilities or reopen our council chamber at this point in time. If case counts were more favorable and we had COVID under control, we were certainly planning on early in 2022 of a more advanced opening of other programs and facilities. But at this time, I think our best advice is we're going to stay the course. We're continue on in the current mode of service delivery that we've adopted over the last close to 2 years now, 20 months. And on that note, I'll pass it over to Deputy Mark Valchich, who heads up our COVID team, and he can outline a little bit more about what we're finding out and what our overall plan is at this point in time. So over to you, Mr. Valchich.
Thank you, Mr. Webster, and Madam Mayor, through you. Good evening, members of council and public. Councillor Persicini, great question. The one thing I can say to sort of reassure members of council and the public is about a year ago, we developed a decision-making framework that considers what public health data is indicating. It looks at trend data, it looks at provincial regulations, and based on all of that, our organization has been very capable of expanding and contracting quite rapidly, depending on changing conditions. So our process will be the same as it's been for the last 12 to 18 months. We will use that framework, and as conditions change, we will adjust accordingly. And our team has gotten quite comfortable in sort of, as I say, being flexible, adaptive, and nimble in these circumstances. So we'll certainly keep in very close contact with public health through a variety of our staff, including our fire chief, that is our community emergency management coordinator and meets weekly with that York Region team and public health. So we're very closely connected. The CAOs meet weekly, and so we have lots of intelligence and communication taking place as things evolve, and we're very confident that we'll adjust accordingly as we go. So very comfortable with the process that we have in place and the decision-making framework. In terms of the memo that's before you this evening, Madam Mayor, really focuses largely on the issue of HVAC systems, filtration, air quality. There's a lot of information in there. I just want to express appreciation to Mr. Karmazin, Mr. Catania, and Mr. McPherson, our health and safety coordinator, not only for putting very comprehensive information forward to you this evening in the memo, but more importantly, for all the work they've done over the past close to 2 years in sort of making necessary health and safety modifications to our facilities, putting in place very effective health and safety procedures and protocols, as well as the increased cleaning and maintenance procedures that have made sure that our facilities stay safe and healthy for anyone that is in attendance. So with that, Madam Mayor, we turn it back to you, and we're happy to take any questions you might have.
Thank you very much. Councillor Persicini, you have a question?
I just wanted to comment on the answers. Is very good, and I trust our team of people. But is there any way that we could tell the public or market it somehow? You know, this is a real crucial time right now, Christmas and New Year's. That, you know, what can we do to put that message out to the people? Hey guys, if we don't do the right things, they're going to lock us down again. So maybe, I don't know how to get the message out to the people and say, hey, this is serious stuff. You know, you can't play games. Stay home if you can, or follow the rules, and try not to be out in big crowds. Maybe we won't get locked down. Anyway, just a thought. How I trust our people. We have a great team, but I'm just a little nervous about what's out there. Thank you.
I think we're all nervous about what's out there. I'm wondering, thank you for your comments. I'm wondering if we could engage our communications folks to send out some messages through the mediums that we can use, and certainly share the information as well with all members of council. I know people have Facebook and other means of communicating with residents, and perhaps it's timely to do that now. It seems like a few days ago things were pretty level. It doesn't seem that so today. So I just would, I see Mita is with us now, and I'm just wondering if there's an opportunity to share certainly the COVID update that we have had today, but also to engage with some communications that all members of council might be able to send out to their contacts.
Through you, Madam Mayor, we really work very closely with York Region Public Health. We take their direction and their lead, and in fact their communication products, because it's important to communicate with one strong voice across all municipalities in the region and the province, the country for that matter. And so we continue to repost and share the region's information. Plus, we have a dedicated page on our website where we direct individuals to go. It has all of the links to the provincial information and York Region information about COVID. It's important that we direct people to the source of the information, and so that's what our efforts are working towards.
Thank you very much. And your source, of course, is York Region Public Health.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Councillor Roy, thank you. Councillor Roy DeClemente, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Just to add to that, I think it's if there's a way for us to lend our voice and share through our channel some of the messaging that is coming from public health. My child's school just sent a very long letter from public health, sort of outlining the importance of vaccination, the fact that there are alarming rates of infection on kids 5 to 11. And in fact, in our own community, we have 3 schools in full outbreak status, one that has 11 cases. And so I think it's important that we help amplify the message about the rapid test kits that are coming home with children, and how to best use them to keep families safe before gatherings, and also to keep 2 tests in reserve in order to make sure that there's a safe return in January. And if there's a way for us to amplify some of that messaging, I think it's certainly worth doing at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Crothers, go ahead, please.
Thank you. To the earlier point, I think one of the best things we can do to protect ourselves is the boosters. And now that it's open to 50+, and there's rumors that it's going to 18+ anytime now, having more of the pop-up clinics that we've had so far would be amazing. I know we had one today that was booked up almost before it was even announced. So anything we can do to get more clinics like that in our area, there is nothing available in our area between now and January. So in the whole northern end of the region. So I think anything we can do to push for more booster clinics, also for the 5 to 11-year-olds as well, of course. I also wanted to just comment on the HVAC report. Thank you so much. I feel my questions around HVAC were thoroughly addressed. I feel like I had a crash course in HVAC systems. I was expecting just a one-page report of here's what we've done, but instead we got all the background, which was very, very helpful. So thank you so much for that. And I feel like we're in as best hands as possible for anyone who has to go into the Civic Center. So I just want to give my thanks to staff for answering my questions so thoroughly. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Persicini, would you move the COVID update, please?
Yes, I will.
And Councillor Roy DiClemente, would you second that? Thank you very much. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. We are down to deputations. No deputations this evening and no presentations under G this evening. The next item we have is our Budget Committee recommendations.
Madam Mayor, I believe that those recommendations are to be just received at this point, and then we'll be dealing with the budget at item L for adoption, L1 and L2 for council to adopt the budget committee recommendations.
Thank you. So our Budget Committee recommendations to adopt the Budget Committee recommendations from the meeting held on November 22nd, 2021. Number 2, to adopt the Budget Committee recommendations from the meeting held on November 24th, 2021. Be it resolved that Council adopt the Budget Committee recommendations from the meetings held on November 22nd, 2021 and November 24th, 2021. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Morton, Councillor Crone. Any questions? All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. And we are now at the adoption of the minutes. And the first one is to adopt the Budget Committee minutes from the meeting held on November 22nd, 2021. Number 2, to adopt the Budget Committee minutes from the meeting held on November 24th, 2021. Number 3, to adopt the council minutes from the special meeting held on November 24th, 2021. And number 4, to adopt the council minutes from the meeting held on December 7th, 2021. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Foster, Councillor Crothers. All those in favor? That's carried. We are at administration and presentation of environmental initiatives.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We're kicking off this evening with two interesting reports. Both of them under this item here, which is we're currently under J1, and the next item under K1. Both technically have budget impacts. Now, this one in particular regarding the environmental initiatives affects our gross budget, but does not affect our tax levy budget. And that is the same with respect to the next one with the arena seat here. So I just want to remind council, while they do have budgetary impacts, they aren't affecting the tax levy. They're being funded from other sources. So that's number one. This report, we had committed, I believe in May, we had come forward with an environmental update report, and council requested that we report later in this fiscal year on the scoping of that. And we were planning on bringing it December 7th, so it could be considered as part of the budget. And we were fine tuning it at that time, so we thought it would be best to defer it to this evening's session. So what we have is our team has put together an update on our environmental program. when council adopted its strategic plan early in the term, the environment, sustainability, and getting even better at environmental initiatives such as climate change and climate impacts of our programs and services was certainly a key mandate for all of council. We have not had a dedicated resource to this portfolio, and I'm going to turn it over now to Deputy Valcic, who with a sub team has put together this evening's presentation. And so over to you, Mr. Valcic.
Thank you, Mr. Webster. Madam Mayor, through you, next slide, please. So as the CAO indicated, there's been not only is this an identified priority of council through its strategic plan and its other sort of dialogue and policies and so on that we pass, but it was a focus part of a presentation and a workshop back in May. At that point, there was a dialogue and discussion about opportunities for moving forward, how our departments can collaborate a little bit more together, because as the CAO indicated, although I'm presenting this to you, Madam Mayor and Council, really this is a corporate-wide initiative, and it's going to be successful based on corporate-wide implementation. So next slide, please. Our staff team, largely led by our staff in the CIAS department, have looked at some of the practices around other municipalities. And although it's fair to say that East Gwillimbury has a history of strong environmental practices, policies, and programs, we have not had a dedicated resource that can, number one, sort of pull that information together and report in a more comprehensive way about those things that we're doing, and also, and equally importantly, work to develop new program initiatives and policies that that we might want to implement to make a difference environmentally in terms of sustainability and climate change. And so what we will be recommending a couple of slides from now is that as part of your 2022 budget deliberation, you consider an allocation for us to contract a resource that would lead a comprehensive program of environmental initiatives in 2022. Next slide, please. So I'm not going to read through these because I think they're pretty self-explanatory, but we've tried to come up with what we think are a list of proposed responsibilities, just to give you an idea of what types of things this contracted resource, if approved, would focus on. And as you can see, there's everything there from leadership and direction in developing and implementing programs, establishing and chairing a sustainability steering committee of internal departmental representatives. And this is something that we found actually has been quite successful in other initiatives. Our OPM master planning process is another example of where we've actually started to formalize an internal working team that coordinates all these, very significant initiatives. So we think that that is something that we should be doing as well as it relates to sustainability and climate change. Next slide, please. And again, just further responsibilities. I won't read them because I think you can read these out. But there's quite a series of areas of focus that we think this resource can assist us with. Next slide, please. So in terms of the funding, the CAO mentioned this. We believe that with a budget of $100,000 for 2022, that we could acquire a contracted resource that could assist us to help fulfill those responsibilities that you saw in the previous two slides. The funding sources that staff would recommend are both reserve funding sources. One is the environmental and watershed enhancement component of our community capital contribution charge reserve, and the other 50% water and wastewater reserves. And we do know that you've not yet approved the water and wastewater budget for 2022. So understanding that this would sort of be a commitment in advance of that approval, but I do want to reassure council that there is adequate funds in that reserve. So from that standpoint, we do not believe that there's an issue with you considering that this evening if you wish. The resource would report in through myself, but again, I want to emphasize this is really much more than a corporate services initiative. This is a town-wide initiative, and we would be working very closely with the CIES team, the planning team, development services, building, our Parks and Rec culture teams, and so on. So very much a corporate-wide initiative that we would coordinate. Next slide, please. So, Madam Mayor, you can see the resolution that we're suggesting we would propose that council consider this evening that would enable this resource to be, the budget to be approved, and then for us to initiate some sort of process to acquire a resource to assist us in that regard. So that's all I have to say in terms of the presentation, Madam Mayor. Back to you. We're happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much. Questions for Mr. Velchik? Councillor Crothers, go ahead, please.
Thank you very much. And thank you for this report. I think this is a much needed position. I think you're right that it does extend across the organization, and we're going to see that more and more. The mayor kicked off the meeting with some thoughts about the disasters that we're seeing south of the border and right here in Canada that are being linked to climate change. So I think having someone on staff who can make sure that we're as prepared as we can be for that is money well spent. As we saw with the HELP, some of the climate change initiatives that we can be doing as a municipality will save us money in the long run. So I think that the money invested in this resource, we are going to see many times over that money coming back to the town in the form of savings as we prepare. My question is, where will we be posting this position, and will we invest in a recruiter to make sure that we get the best possible person for this position?
Madam Mayor, we haven't yet made determinations about where we're going to recruit or what resources we might need to assist us in that recruitment process. So I can't give you a definitive answer on that, other than to say that we'll be looking to ensure that we're bringing in the very best resource that we can possibly find to assist in this regard, because we do want to make sure that someone that comes in to work with us has not only the, let's call it the technical skills and background, but the right attitude and energy level to bring, and enthusiasm to bring to this type of leadership role, because it really is a role that you need somebody that is quite motivated by it. This is more than just a job. This is really an area where you need someone that can really come in and energize the organization and make a difference. So that's the type of person that we would be pursuing.
That's wonderful. I would highly suggest that we look at a recruiter. We know right now that it's there's a lot more jobs available than there's people available right now, across the board. So with something like this, that we want to find just the perfect person. We want someone with enough experience that they can really lead us, but also near enough out of school that they're up to date on the latest, right? So I think what we're looking at is so specific that I would highly suggest, in the essence of time, we look for someone who can help us find that right person. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Other comments, questions? Councillor Roy DeClemente, and then Councillor Crone.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't have any significant objection to trying this out with a contracted resource for a year or something, just to have them report back and get started on this work. As I've said in the past, I felt that we were already doing a good job on the sustainability initiatives, but I do recognize that having a resource to kind of pull it all together might be of value to the organization. And so I'm willing to give it a try. I guess my question is, we had the presentation back in May. We spent quite a bit of time going through the budget process and not a word was mentioned about this. And we're here, it's not in our budget, it's a separate from the budget. I'm just wondering why that is.
Mr. Velchik, would it be you or
I'll
Mr. Webb?
speak to
Go
that.
ahead.
I'll speak to that, Madam Mayor. As CAO, I'll take accountability. We had a busy agenda. Busyness is never an excuse for not getting things done. We had planned it, as I said, to bring it on December 7th, which was to be for the as part of the budget deliberation, mind you, later, but it was still a scheduled budget day for additional items. And for various reasons, the leadership team thought that we need a little bit more work on the presentation and request, and set it aside and moved it to this evening's session. So, you know, we would have liked to deliver it earlier, but in our opinion, we're getting it in. It doesn't impact the tax levy budget. We think it's a solid program with a good funding source, and we'd like to get moving forward in 2022. And I'll akin it to our economic development program and our engagement, diversity, and inclusion programs, where if we get the right individuals in this organization, we're going to see good go to great. And that's the hopes here.
Thank you, Mr. Webster. If I may, Madam Mayor, just further, I know in the past we've brought in contracted resources, and then we've had to scramble to renew because we want to be in line with our procurement bylaw. I'd like to be really clear about what we're doing tonight and delineate that a certain length of time for the contract, and then any renewal would be subject to further reporting to council, because I want to see results, just as we all do. So I'd like to make that suggestion. Thank you, and I'm looking forward to further discussion.
On that, Madam Mayor, I could respond. I think it's logical to say a healthy recruitment would probably take a 90-day period plus minus, and to get the right person in. We'll also use our personality profiling that we've used to help build our team. That's one of our recruitment tools. So we will budget it for a year. That will allow it to extend 3 months into the fiscal year of 2023. As next year's budget will not be considered until after the election, after orientation. So it will, we will be bringing forward the 2023 budget in January of 2023 with hopeful approval sometime in the February-March timeframe of 23.
Other questions? Councillor Crone, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you to staff. Thank you for bringing this forward. I think this could be an excellent addition to our team. I think, you know, environmental and sustainability issues are very much like other issues that we face, like community safety, fiscal responsibility. You're never done. It's something that you're always working on, and I guess the word of advice I would give to you, to staff, when working with this individual, that you set up their you know, their performance standards, their benchmarks for success. Make sure that all those goals are aligned across the team, so that it's not just for this individual. Because if you have misaligned goals and benchmarks, you can get friction, and it'll be very hard to hang on to good quality talent. So just a little piece of advice that I'm throwing out there free of charge. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Other questions or comments? I'm not seeing any. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Crone, Councillor Persichini. I will read the resolution out. Be it resolved that administration presentation dated December 14th, 2021, entitled Environmental Initiatives, be received, and that council approve a budget request of $100,000 to retain a contracted resource in 2022 to lead a comprehensive program of environmental initiatives funded 50% from community capital contributions, and that would be environmental and watershed enhancements, and 50% from water wastewater reserves. Questions? All those in favor? I'm sorry, did you have a question first, Councillor Roy DeClemente, or were you just fast on the vote?
Just a request to add a clause there at the end of that, on the end of that, with that any renewal of the contract is to be subject to further reporting to council. And I'm happy to make the motion, or if there's any discussion, that's okay too.
I'm not seeing any.
Happy to treat as a friendly amendment, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Roy DiClemente. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. We are at item K, Community Parks, Recreation and Culture, but perhaps I should go back first. Are there any other items for administration that are not listed on our agenda at this time? Mr. Webster?
Nothing to add at this time, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. I'll move along to K, Community Parks, Recreation, and Culture, and we have one report at this time. Mr. Karmazin, good to see you.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. You as well. Through you, Madam Mayor. This report for council is an additional proposed capital project for 2022 to add seat heaters to the New Roads Arena spectator spectator seating area. The project will provide an increased level of comfort for the visitors and spectators at the facility and at that arena. And CPRC and Finance have identified a valid funding source for the project. And CPRC staff will continue to look to our community stakeholders, our affiliated sports groups, and our corporate partners to determine if there's any type of a partnership that may be able to contribute to this capital project to possibly offset some of the costs associated with the project. I'd be happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Thank you very much. Questions? I'm not seeing any questions. Councillor Persicini, a question, or you're moving it? Thank you. Councillor Roy DiClemente, question or second?
Just a request. I'm happy to second it. Just a request that we put the funding source into the resolution, that it's to be funded from the building reserve, just for transparency's purposes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Be it resolved that the Community Parks, Recreation and Culture Report, CPRC 2021-08, dated December 14th, 2021, entitled East Gwillimbury Sports Complex seat heaters be received, and that council approve an amount not to exceed $50,000, excluding taxes, with the 2022 capital budget as described in this report. And Councillor Roy DiClemente, could you repeat that for me?
To be funded from the building reserve.
Thank you. And Mr. Webster?
I believe there was some discussion with General Manager Karmazin and leadership team about potentially getting some other funding from other areas. And I'm wondering if that should be part of the council direction too, that we could take a look at, not just defaulting to the building reserve, but also seeing if there's other potential community partners or others that may want to step up and assist with funding this heating solution.
So we could possibly add that to the motion as well.
It's going to be a lengthy motion, but it would have 50,000 funded from the building reserve, and with additional funding options to be pursued by staff and reported on subsequently.
That council requests that staff explore additional sources and report back. Do I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Persicini moved it. Councillor Morton's going to second this, I think. Yes, you are. Thank you.
I am.
All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Are there any other items, Mr. Karmazin, under Community Parks, Recreation, and Culture?
Through you, Madam Mayor, just a very brief update with regards to a situation that staff are closely monitoring. Some of the other minor hockey associations across the region have been announcing some temporary shutdown over the holidays of some of the games and practices due to a growing number of teams that have had to isolate and in effect trying to decrease the spread of the variant. CPRC continues to work with our partners with EG Minor Hockey very closely. And if EG Minor Hockey Association does announce any form of a shutdown, you can rest assured that CPRC staff, as well as communications, will make best efforts to ensure mayor and council, as well as the public, are kept informed. I just wanted to ensure council, mayor and council were aware that of this situation that staff is closely monitoring.
Thank you very much, and please thank staff for monitoring this this item. It seems like it's been up and down about every other week. So I know that there are a lot of anxious coaches and trainers and skaters and hockey players that are hoping to continue with a season, but I'm not sure that it's going to be any different than perhaps last year. We hope not. Could I have a motion just to receive Mr. Carbis's update, please? Councillor Foster, Councillor Roy DiClemente. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. We'll move along to finance. Item L and finance presentation 2022 proposed business plan and budget.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. If we could move to the next slide, please. This just wanted to provide a brief update as to where we are standing in terms of our tax-supported operating budget. We started our deliberations or our council discussions back on November 22nd, and staff had tabled a budget with a 0% tax levy increase. Through the discussions over the November 22nd and 24th, the budget committee recommended adding a provision for operating costs associated with the eventual opening of the Health and Active Living Plaza, and recommended the addition of a full-time staffing equivalent for operating for the roads and park operations. That was to be funded in part by some savings that we would offset in terms of part-time salaries and a dedicated 1% tax levy increase. So when we finished our deliberations on the 24th, the tax levy increase was proposed at 1%. So the two additional projects that were endorsed today do not affect the tax levy position that we're in. It will increase the capital side. So if we can go to the next slide, please. So we have a report that is on the agenda for approval. It was originally tabled at $55.9 million, which included the tax-supported operating, the development and fee-supported operating, and the capital programs. The water and wastewater program will be tabled in January, so we're just looking at the three components. So with the two amendments that were endorsed today, the total budget approval will be $56 million. And as I mentioned before, there's a 1% tax levy increase, which is equivalent to a bit less than $20 for the average homeowner. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Marshall. Questions of staff? I'm not seeing any at this time. Mr. Webster, go ahead, please.
Madam Mayor, I'd be remiss. I should have probably introduced this topic as well tonight, as you know, now being behind many budgets over the years. This budget tonight has great credit due to Mr. Marshall and his financial team that he's put together. And not just that, but deep in our organization, every single general manager and department really came to the plate for this year. And I think that the fact that since March of 20, we've been in this very restricted COVID times. There's incredible cost pressures, supply chain issues, labor issues right now. And I think it's reflective of a very responsible budget that the council, by providing the direction, we've come in with our base programs at the zero. And again, I very much commend Mr. Marshall. I don't think it's short-sighted. I think that what we're hoping to do is get back to aligning our base programs with inflation as we move forward. Let's just hope inflation doesn't get out of control as we move forward. This is another element that we're going to have to be very cautious of in the 23 and future budget years as well. So I just wanted to take a moment prior to council's consideration of adoption of this to make sure that the finance team has been fully commended for an excellent job. Well done.
Thank you very much, Mr. Webster. Questions, comments? I'm not seeing any at this time. I will read the motion. Madam Clerk?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I believe per discussions with General Manager Marshall, there's been some revisions made to this particular resolution to include the above noted motions that Council passed earlier. So I have incorporated that for Council's consideration of this particular time. I can put that onto the screen so that it reflects the most up-to-date version of what you guys are passing tonight. And the highlighted sections are the ones that were just passed a couple of minutes ago.
Thank you very much. I will read the motions from our screen as opposed to from my computer. Be it resolved that finance presentation dated December 14th, 2021, entitled 2022 Proposed Business Plan and Budget be received as amended, and that finance report FIN 2021-11 dated December 14th, 2021, entitled 2022 Proposed Business Plan and Budget be received, and that council approve the 2022 proposed tax supported business plan and budget with a total tax levy requirement of $27,232,095, representing a 1% net tax levy increase as summarized in Appendix 1, and that council approve that the 2022 proposed development and fee-supported business plan and budget as summarized in Appendix 2, and that council approve the 2022 proposed capital budget as summarized in Appendix 3, and that council approve the new staffing request as summarized in Appendix 4, and that council approve a budget request of $100,000 to retain a contracted resource in 2022 to lead a comprehensive program of environmental initiatives funded 50% from community capital contributions, environmental and watershed enhancements, and 50% from water/wastewater reserves, and that council requests that staff explore additional funding sources and report back. That council approve a cost of living adjustment for all non-union staff of 1.85% to be implemented on January 1st, 2022. Are there questions? Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Morton, Councillor Persicini. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously.
I'm going to ask for a recorded vote, actually, Madam Mayor, but I was slow to mute
You were
on my
slow on the hand. That's okay. Let's do it now. And I don't think it's going to change, but let's do it now. Madam Clerk, could we have a recorded vote, please?
Through you, Madam Mayor, Councillor Roy DeClemente has requested for a recorded vote. Councillor Roy DeClemente, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councillor Carruthers, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councillor Crone, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councillor Foster, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mayor Haxton, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councillor Morton, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councillor Persicini, how do you vote?
Yes.
Madam Mayor, that motion's been carried unanimously.
Thank you very much. Well, we've come a long way in a short period of time. I'm wondering if any members of council have any comments they'd like to make at this time. Councillor Morton, go ahead, please.
I would just like to thank Mr. Marshall and his people, and because they've worked very, very hard over the last few months, and they just deserve a great big huge pat on the back, along with Val and his other member. And I think they've done an amazing job, and they certainly deserve to be given a big clap.
Thank you very much. Are there any other comments at this time? I'm not seeing any. I'm really pleased that we've been able to provide our residents with a 1% increase on property taxes for 2022. These past almost 2 years have been difficult for everyone, and we continue to deal with COVID-19 pandemic. It's hoped that this budget will assist our residents as we ultimately move towards recovery, and let's hope that that's the direction that we're going. Our 2022 budget keeps East Gwillimbury at the lowest relative taxes in York Region, maintains service level, uses technology to improve service delivery, and prepares us for the future. On behalf of council, I thank our residents who participated in the budget survey and shared comments and expectations for this budget. To our staff, thank you for bringing forward a budget and business plan that puts the community first and amplifies a culture of continuous improvement and innovation. And to council, this was truly a team effort and a successful accomplishment. We had some important and informative decisions which ultimately led to us to our goal of a zero tax increase for existing programs and a 1% increase primarily for operating the Health and Active Living Plaza. Thank you very much, team. Very much appreciated. We should be very proud of what we've accomplished. Thank you. I will move along to item number 3, and that's the finance memo from the 2022 Ontario Community Infrastructure Funding Announcement. A very exciting announcement at this time. Mr. Marshall, would you like to go ahead with that, please?
Sure. Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. So the Ontario Community Infrastructure Funding announcement is some good news for the town. So the program has been established for several years for small and rural municipalities to help them with their asset repair and replacement programs. So we've been receiving this funding for a few years, and we've used it towards our road rehabilitation program. And the funding has ramped up somewhat from about $300,000 for the past couple of years to about $450,000 to $470,000. And in 2021, the province decided to review the program again. And the result was basically doubling the program for the rural and small municipalities. So our share went up by over $500,000. So we had included in the budget a similar allocation that we received previously, about $470,000. So this $550,000 extra, we're going to apply towards the east town line bridge rehab project that is a very significant project in terms of dollar value. And so it will help reduce our share of the costs associated with that. And our allocation for 2023 will be discussed through our budget deliberations during the 2023 budget. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Questions? So I know that it's more than we ever expected. Could you actually give us the number that we did receive?
Sure. Through you, Madam Mayor. We are in 2021. We're going to receive $1,040,889.
No. Well done. Thank you very much. That's a lot more than we've seen over the last few years, for sure. Thank you. Any questions of Mr. Marshall? Councillor Morton, would you move that? Councillor Crone, would you second that? Sounds like it's going to your area with the bridge. And that's a really good news story for everyone when you think a few weeks ago we didn't have a very good story to talk about that. So be it resolved that finance memorandum dated December 14th, 2021, entitled 2022 Ontario Community Infrastructure Funding Announcement be received. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Are there any other items under finance at this time?
There's nothing further, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. We will move to corporate services.
Madam Mayor, I'm gonna kick this one off as well. I'm just sort of in the CAO mood tonight as last council meeting of 21. It's got us in a festive approach. So just as Mr. Marshall is a financial expert and the financial team did amazing things this year, we are very, very fortunate to have recruited and attracted Meeta Gandhi to our organization in this fiscal year. And, you know, some of the best things that happen in organizations or in life for that matter are unplanned. And we didn't initially plan on attracting and working out an arrangement with Meeta, and we're fortunate we have. She's brought in a wealth of experience to our communications and customer service portfolio. And she also is an expert in equity, diversity, and inclusion. And I think the lessons learned for myself and the leadership team moving forward is you're going to hear a presentation this evening from Meeta. And it's important that this isn't just Meeta's journey, but it becomes a team journey for all of us moving forward. I put it akin a little bit to a budget process. While it's led by one individual or a team, it takes all to participate and engage and become part of moving forward with this. So on that note, I'm going to pass it over again to Deputy Valchich, who will introduce this very exciting and worthwhile initiative that we're building on for the future.
Thank you, Mr. Webster, and very, very excited to have these items before you this evening. I'm not going to waste any time making any comments other than to pass it over to our Director of Communications, Customer Service, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, maybe the longest title in the organization. Meeta Gandhi, and Ms. Gandhi will lead you through the presentation as well as item M2, the report. So I'll turn it over to Ms. Gandhi now.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. We have in front of you a presentation that I will go through. Also accompanying the presentation is a draft equity, diversity, and inclusion framework, as well as a cover staff report that speaks to our journey to date. So if you can just go to the next slide, please. In terms of context and purpose, we recognize that East Gwillimbury is has enormous population and a diversity growth. Our visible minority population was 11% in 2016. I am eager to see what the most recent census data is going to show us, which should be coming available next year. So that we can have even more current stats. But certainly the growth in population and the diversity is something to take note of. It's important to also to consider equity, diversity, and inclusion from a recruitment and retention perspective. It was already mentioned earlier today that we have a very tight job market. In terms of recruiting individuals, we want to make sure that we respond to the diverse workforce needs, workforce and their needs. And also from a community engagement perspective, we have a number of community engagement activities that are ongoing at any given time, and making sure that we reach out to the community in their way, in their space, and in their language is very important. So the purpose really of the equity, diversity, and inclusion framework is to establish a roadmap for creating an inclusive community that celebrates diversity. Next slide, please. So the background, this isn't something just started 6 months ago when Meeta Gandhi joined the organization. We've been on this journey for a long time. The York Region context is one where there is a Municipal Diversity and Inclusion Group, MDIG, as we refer to it. It was formed in 2016. That's the group that established the Inclusion Charter. And that's something that we signed as an organization back in 2019, and it highlights the town's commitment to welcoming and embracing inclusive communities. We also work extensively with Neighborhood Network. It's an organization that works with East Gwillimbury, with Aurora, and with Newmarket, along with its partner Magna that organizes neighborhood network activities. And they have been doing research. They've presented to council, and there's a recommendation to bring them back to continue that work that we're doing with them. We also have a York Region DEI community of practice. People say EDI or DEI. There's no right or wrong way, but the initials are all the same: equity, diversity, and inclusion. And that's where there are people who have jobs similar to mine who are meeting on a regular basis, because in some ways there's a lot of information that we're uncovering and expertise that we're eager to share and to learn from each other. So I meet regularly with similarly minded folks in Markham and Vaughan and Newmarket and Aurora, and together we share and bring ideas. The next slide, please. So our approach is founded on our pillars. It's very interesting as if you look at each of the strategic priority pillars, there is at least one element that is related specifically to equity, diversity, and inclusion. I'm not going to read this slide, but it is something that has been part of this council's mandate since this particular strategic plan was developed. Next slide, please. So I'm going to speak about EG's approach. Already underway, we have a Diversity and Inclusion Advisory Committee of Council, and that has been in place throughout this term of council. We have diversity and inclusion training that has been established and continues, and there's some recommendations where we can go with that. This year, we established a flag raising protocol, and our community flagpole was constructed back in 2020. We have a land acknowledgement that we now recite at the beginning of any council meeting, as well as other events and festivals and festivities. We make sure that we acknowledge the land upon which we use. For the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, there were a host of activities. This poster is an example of, brings together some of the pictures that were created, and we're actually looking to share the samples of the work that we did and the community involvement with the Chippewas of Georgina. We've done a lot of work with Pride, and we continue to raise the flag and to amplify our community, and to make sure that the individuals who recognize and celebrate Pride do so in a welcoming way. Public art is another way, and I'll be showing you talking about that momentarily. And then with our library services, I would say that everything we do that is EDI related is echoed through the way we deliver services in our libraries. So these are just some of examples of the approach that we have going forward. Next slide, please. Our approach for 2022 is to establish a foundation and implement some initiatives that are relatively low in terms of resource requirements. We haven't identified through the 2022 budget a specific human resource requirement, but there is work that can be incorporated into everyone's business plan, operational plan for the duration of the year. And there's a lot of work that's already happened. So for example, we were looking to make sure that we have a translate button on the website. It's something we did. It was, I'll call it low-hanging fruit. It's already in place. If you go to the East Gwillimbury website, we now have a button. If you click it, the website can be translated to any one of, I think, 160 languages. It's a Google Translate service that's available in the back end, and that's something that we didn't have. It's something that we can do. It's easy to do, and so we just did it. Going forward, corporate services, in my capacity, I'll be developing the framework, continuing to develop the framework, tracking the initiatives, and providing support to individuals through the organization to execute the plans that they have. And the departments are ultimately accountable for activities and initiatives. I liken this to AODA, Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act, where, for example, the clerk is responsible for reporting to the ministry on what we're doing from an AODA perspective. But in that example, for myself in communications, I'm responsible for making sure that the website meets AODA requirements. Building is responsible for making sure that we have accessible buildings, etc. So it is an area that there's shared accountability for the activities and the initiatives that are taking place. And I would take on the role of reporting back to council on an annual basis on the activities that we are undertaking. Next slide, please. So the proposed EDI framework has a three-pronged approach to engage, educate, and express. I have been using these three pillars since I started. It is included in an article I wrote in Municipal World, and I'm so happy when I see other people start to use these words in the dialogues that they have with each other and with the public. It is easy to remember and easy to, I think, relate to. So I think it's important that we have words and we use phrases that are identifiable and that can be translated into the work that we do. So I'm just going to go a little bit through each one of these elements. From the engaged perspective, next slide, please. From the engaged perspective, it is exactly that. What we want to do is we want to make sure that we engage staff and the community in the work that we're doing from an EDI perspective. And that includes developing an employee resource group. So seeking the opinions and feedback and thoughts, perspectives of the employees of the organization. We want to collaborate with other municipalities like and organizations like Neighborhood Network and MDIG, as I referred to earlier. We want to engage in conversations with the Chippewas of Georgina and identify specific actions to address the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's report. We want to build relationships with community organizations and seek input from communities to address racism specifically. Under the educate pillar, next slide, please. We want to develop and promote education and training for staff, council committees, and committees of council. So for example, when we introduced the work that we were doing for the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, that was accompanied by online training that was available and actually required training for all staff. The same training was made available to council. I'm working with staff to also make it available to committees of council. There's just some technical components that need to be done for that to happen. But it's important to make sure that we have individuals in our organization and the community who are equipped with the knowledge that they need to better communicate and collaborate with the communities that we work with. We want to improve resources information on the East Gwillimbury website. We have a new page called Celebrating Our Community, and that is the landing page upon which all of our activities that are associated with EDI are now located. It's all in one place. And we want to continue to explore opportunities to expand EDI programs and services within our public library system. Under Express, the idea, sorry, the next slide. I'm talking like I have control over the PowerPoint presentation. Sorry about that. The Express pillar is really about what are we doing with the information and the and the way we express EDI. So it is through the policies we develop. It is through the public art. It is through the consultation that we do, the active engagement with individuals. It is how we are living EDI. So we need to develop internal and external policies such as recruitment, public art, translation policies. This is really the acts and the activities that we are taking on as a municipality to make sure that they are reflective of our community. We want to improve access to services with the support of translation tools. I've already mentioned that we have a translation button on our website, but we are going to explore how we incorporate translation services to our customer service area and in any other way people want to interact with the municipality. We want to plan public events that incorporate EDI. So, for example, when we were looking at rehabilitation programs or any type of secondary plan work, we want to make sure that the public events and the public engagement incorporates EDI and that they are reflective of the community. Working closely with the Diversity and Inclusion Advisory Committee is critically important to this. I discussed this approach with with DIAC a couple of months ago so that they knew what was happening and have been informing them about this plan presentation as we've been moving along. That is a critical interaction. And we also want to ensure public engagement actively seeks diverse perspectives from community groups and Indigenous communities. So this is a three-pronged approach. Each department has specific initiatives that they will be working on that fall within the Engage, Educate, and Express pillars. And I will be supporting all of the departments in their efforts and reporting back to council this time next year. And that is the conclusion of the presentation. If anybody has any questions, the next slide I think says questions. Yes.
Thank you very much. Questions from Ms. Gandy? Councillor Crothers, go ahead, please.
I just wanted to thank Ms. Gandy for the presentation and all the amazing work that she's been doing, working so well with our DIAC committee. They absolutely love her. They're feeling they're more in the advisory role now that Mita's on board and doing all the heavy lifting, and the committee can resort back to advising the town. So we really appreciate all the work and the events that have been organized, even though we're in the middle of COVID. We're looking forward to even more wonderful community gatherings once we can do that. So thank you so much for that report.
Thank you. Other questions, comments? I'm not seeing any at this time. I certainly want to thank you as well. It's a direction that we have wanted to be in for quite some time, and I know in speaking to all members of council, we're quite confident in the direction that we are going now, and very happy that East Gwillimbury is moving in this direction. So thank you very much, Ms. Gandy.
My pleasure.
Thank you. I have. Oh, I'm sorry. It's so close to your face. I didn't see your hand. Go ahead, Councillor Roy DeClemente.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to Ms. Gandy. Thank you as well. I'm just looking through the resolutions that are before us on our agenda, and it doesn't speak to adopting or endorsing the framework you've presented to us today. And I'm wondering if that might be also appropriate for us to do at this time.
I think it's quite appropriate. Other members of council, how do you feel about this? Is our corporate service communication branch equity, diversity, inclusion framework, number one on our corporate services. That could you give us the wording again, Councillor Roy DeClemente, to add to that?
Yeah, thank you. I guess it speaks to the comprehensive representation that we've got today, because I don't have any questions. So what we would be doing is we'd be receiving the presentation, we'd be receiving the report, and endorsing the framework as presented as in the appendix.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions? So the first one I have is Corporate Services Communication Branch Presentation, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Framework. And I'm wondering if I could have a mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Crothers, Councillor Persicini, all those in favor? And that's carried. The second one, Madam Clerk.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the motion that's presented on the screen before you is capturing the presentation, the report, and the additional clause with respect to the endorsement, as well as the approval of the unveiling of the signature plant or canoe at the Nikita Trailhead.
Thank you. Can everyone read that at this point? Could I have a mover and a seconder for that, please? Councillor. Sorry, I already do have. I'm ahead of myself. Thank you. Any questions? All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Are there any other items under community services?
Nothing further under corporate services, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Gandy. Appreciate you being with us today. You've richened our lives by moving forward with this project. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We are now at Community Infrastructure and Environmental Services. I have nothing at this time on the agenda. However, Mr. Molinari, perhaps you might have something for us later or now.
Nothing further at this time, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Any questions of Mr. Molinari at this point? I'm not seeing any. We'll move along to item O, and this is Emergency and Community Safety Services. And Chief Mackenzie, I believe you're there and are going to introduce someone for us.
That's correct. Thank you, Your Honor, and good evening. You'll recall that later last summer, or Emergency and Community Safety Services posted a position for an Assistant Deputy Fire Chief to support the current command team. And after a thorough recruitment process, we were very fortunate to invite and have Rick Durstoff accept a position to join our team here at ECSS as part of the senior command team. Now, Rick Durstoff comes to us from the Office of the Fire Marshal, where he spent 11 years as a fire investigator. And previous to that, he spent almost 20 years as a Peel Regional Police Officer. And mixed in amongst all that time, he was a paid-on-call firefighter for Halton region, or for Halton and Caledon. So today's memo is an appointment bylaw that allows Rick, as the Assistant Deputy Fire Chief for East Gwillimbury, to carry out the provisions of the Fire Protection and Prevention Act. Your Honor, I know we were able to meet with you last week, and we met with Councillor Roy D. Clemente just to introduce Rick, but I've invited him here tonight to say hello, and if there's any questions of myself or of Rick, I offer it up to the council.
Thank you very much. Is Rick there with you?
Well, he was trying to dial in from his remote location.
Yes, I'm here.
Oh. It looks like we have an audible Rick only, so. Anyway, if there's any questions, I'm happy to take any questions, or if any questions for Rick.
Or Rick, are you wanting to take any questions? We can't see you, but we still might have questions for you.
Absolutely, I'll take any questions.
Thank you. Members of council, any questions? Councilor Persicini, go ahead, please.
Not questions, but just wanted to congratulate him. It's pretty big portfolio he's got there, and we're excited to have him aboard, and I'm sure he'll do good things for us. And congratulations to the chief or whoever chose him, and looking forward to working with him. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? I'm not seeing any at this time. Welcome, Rick. We're certainly pleased to have you with us, and I know that When the timing is right, we'll be able to meet with you in person and certainly enjoy getting to know you much better. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Could I have a motion? Let me just see where we're going here. So I have a motion here, be it resolved that Emergency and Community Support Services Memorandum dated December 14th, 2021, entitled Appointment of Assistant Deputy Chief be received. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Roy DeClemente, Councillor Carruthers, all those in favor, and that's carried. Thank you very much, Chief. Is there anything else that we should be aware of for emergency services?
Thank you, Your Honor. Nothing else.
Thank you. Have a great evening. With that, I will move along to development services under item P. Mr. Ramuno.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening, and good evening to members of the council. First item is a report dealing with the extension of approval of a number of draft plans of subdivision in the Sharon community. There's 4 that are seeking an extension to the 3-year draft plan approval. These plans were approved back in 2010, and our typical condition is that they be reviewed every 3 years, and if the development hasn't been completed. And I think council's aware that the reason these subdivisions haven't been completed is due to the lack of servicing, and so they're coming up for their draft approval period expires April of 2022, and so we're recommending that council extend these for another 3 years to 2025. They have been working with the region on region of York with respect to achieving some additional allocation through a project that will enable these subdivisions to be built out over the next couple of years. And that project should be approved and constructed by the region towards the end of 2022.
Thank you. Questions of Mr. Ramuno? Councillor Carruthers, go ahead, please.
This project by the region, I'm surprised that it's benefiting developers. I thought all future projects were going to benefit us being able to shut down the lagoons.
So to you, Madam Mayor, and I know Mr. Molinari can jump in as well. They've been working with the region. This project is really dealing with the Sharon trunk sewer to generate some additional capacity to allow these subdivisions, which are partially completed, to generate the additional approximately 350 units worth of capacity. So it's specific for these 6 subdivisions, 4 that are subject to this report, and there are another 7 in total that are part of the original builders within the Sharon West subdivision.
I feel very strongly that if there's the ability to generate extra capacity, that we should be all behind trying to get these lagoons shut down rather than building more houses with that excess capacity. So I'll be voting no to this based on that alone. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Councillor Foster, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I don't know if this is a question to kind of put Mr. Ramuno on the spot or any other staff on the spot, but is this the way this type of thing is normally done? It seems a little silly to me when I'm reading this report and thinking that a previous council of 2010 passed these subdivision agreements, and here we are 12 years later, and we're still kind of going through the servicing issues. And I can't help but think that we may find ourselves in the same boat a number of years down the road with the Upper York sewage solution, that we have really no idea what's going to happen. Is there perhaps a chance to take a look at the way these are done, or is this commonplace? I mean, again, I'm fairly new at this. I just I can't help looking at it and thinking, 12 years down the road, it really makes you wonder.
I have Mr. Webster has his hand up. We'll start with him, and perhaps Mr. Ramuno could finish it off. Go ahead, Mr. Webster, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Councillor Foster. I can start by answering your question. This is not how things are normally done or have been done ever in York Region. I can tell you, just to give a little bit of a history lesson, in 2010, there was a few things that happened. We moved council terms to 4 years in length, and we had a new mayor elected. And one of the mayor's first meetings was she got called into Chairman Bill Fish's office at the time. And he told the 3 mayors from Aurora, Newmarket, and East Gwillimbury that the province was fully supportive and on side with a sewage solution that was going to take all of our sewage to Lake Simcoe. It was actually a provincial initiative, the Dalton McGuinty government of the day, and our official plan and all of our planning approvals were all based on that. And we had many raucous meetings with an EA that cost over $30 million, where the region was going to have the Upper York sewage system built in 2018. And Councillor Carruthers, I can assure you that was also going to decommission the lagoons, all in 2018. We are in entirely uncharted waters. The development industry is totally frustrated. They have these draft approvals now that they cannot build. And look at our community. When you drive down Morel Boulevard, it's shameful that we have on the east side largely built out, and on the west side we have all these serviced roads, lights, and a few pioneer homes, I call them. There's some folks living out there, and they're totally by themselves. And you'll see the developers are trying to work together to come up with innovative solutions because the Upper York isn't coming. And what they're trying to do is use this oversized sewer to benefit them because they geographically can benefit. And that is a little bit of an answer to you, Councillor Carruthers, is that the geographics of this is that they can use that sewer, which is large and oversized. But the simple answer is no, this is not normal. Actually, it's quite unacceptable. And, you know, the province has got to, at some point, approve a sewage solution for us so that we can start moving forward with some certainty. And that starts with, number one, decommissioning the lagoons. And then number two, getting our existing subdivisions built out. And then the planned subdivisions that we move to is the next phase. So a little bit of a long answer, but Councillor Foster, you're bang on. This is not normal at all.
Thank you, Mr. Webster. Mr. Ramuno, did you have anything else to add to the discussion?
No, Madam Mayor, I think Mr. Webster captured it, that this is specific to this area, as he mentioned, because it entails some modifications to that oversized trunk within Sharon. So they're going to be taking advantage of that to allow them to finish this Sharon community once and for all, hopefully over the next year or two.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Roy DeClemente, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A comment, a question, and an amendment to the history lesson. And I'll start with the history lesson. These subdivisions were approved before you were mayor, Madam Mayor. This was actually the prior council. It was approved in 2010, in the spring of 2010. There was an election in the fall. And it wasn't until January 2011, when you were newly minted as our mayor, when we found out that the Upper York was going to be sending the treated effluent north. And so that is an important lesson, I think, as far as this is concerned. To the comment I have is in support of Mr. Webster's comment, and that is that the condition of some areas of Sharon Village is indeed shameful. We have noxious weeds, we have construction waste, we have dust. It is not a complete community, and it's completely unacceptable. We have a park that is truncated from being able to access the trail system because we have houses that can't get built. And when we're talking about 273 houses, that is insufficient to even start to address the issue of the lagoons, which is a whole other thing. And so from this perspective, it makes sense for us to try and find a solution to get these homes built. My question is, the extension is for 3 years. Do we think we need 3 years, or can we get it done sooner? And can we do a shorter extension, given that we've already extended it a couple of times?
Mr. Ramuno?
Through you, Madam Mayor. Typically we do these as 3-year extensions. I mean, the modification work should be done by the end of 2022, and these 6 or 7 builders are geared up then to proceed early in 2023 with, amending, preparing subdivision agreements and allowing building permits to be pulled. So I'm thinking it should be completed within 3 years. So my advice to council is we stick with this 3-year extension.
The reason I ask is that it's simply that this has gone on long enough. Earthworks in Sharon Village started in the summer of 2012. And the people who have lived here are tired of living in a construction site. It's been going on long enough. And so if there's a way to provide an incentive to get it done quickly, get the noise and the mud out of the way as fast as possible, I'd like to see that done. And I look forward to any suggestions you may have, Mr. Ramuno.
Just one more thing, through you, Madam Mayor. We have been meeting regularly with the builders, and they are very anxious. As soon as the modifications are done and they've got the green light, end of 2022, early 2023, they will be proceeding with the balance of those building permits.
Mr. Ramuno, is there any way of moving it up if there was a magic wand? What could we do that would move it up? I realize that 22 and 23 are moving it from where it is right now, but it still seems like a terribly long time to have a community such as Sharon. I remember the pictures and the idea of a beautiful community on a hill, a center road, many parks, couple of schools, and it isn't. And I'm wondering, what else can we do, excuse me, to move it along while this seems like at least it's moving forward? How do we move it forward faster?
Yeah, to you, Madam Mayor. The one thing we have been doing is, I think early in 2022, we'll be presenting to council the removal of the holding zones. The zoning bylaws need to be amended, so we're going to do that advance work. We're already, working on preparing those subdivision agreements. That way, we're in a position to execute those agreements, have the H's removed, execute the agreements, and they'll be submitting their permits in 2022, because as I mentioned, they are really anxious as well to get this community built out.
Thank you. These 4 listed here on our agenda have worked in East Gwillimbury for quite some time. They're good builders. They work with us on charitable events as well. And anything that we can do to move it along, I'm hearing from council saying, let's make sure that we work with them to move it as quickly as possible.
Will do.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? I have a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Roy DeClemente, would you like to move this? Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Persicini. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. We're on item 2, and that's Development Services Planning Branch 2021-34 Heritage Removal Request 18574 Woodbine. Mr. Ramuno, are you?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, just briefly. So this is a request to remove a property on Woodbine Avenue. It's the known as the Benjamin Leopard House. It's a listed property on our register of cultural heritage properties. This structure is located on the Woodbine Avenue property. That is the subject of the within our new employment area, and it's, as council's aware, it's also the area that is currently undergoing some site works in advance of a site plan to be submitted soon, and the zoning bylaw for the first phase development of our new business park. The matter was considered by our Heritage Advisory Committee. The majority of the committee recommended that the owner try to preserve the building or relocate it elsewhere on site. Unfortunately, the entire area will be the subject of future employment uses. The applicant has prepared a heritage impact assessment. Staff have provided two recommendations for council's consideration. The one recommendation is that council consider and approve the request to remove to allow the heritage building to be removed and eventually demolished, subject to a number of conditions. Second option that council could consider would be to, try and preserve the structure, but that would entail moving towards designating the property individually under Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act. Currently, it's only a listed property.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Persichini, go ahead, please.
Say we remove that heritage home. Is there any way, Mr. Ramuno, that we can keep some stuff because there was a heritage home and preserve that somewhere that, I'm not at bricks or something, doors, or I don't know, that we could preserve and keep something for it, so if we're going to knock it down. So at least we keep some sort of a heritage there. I would motion to remove it and condition it, keep some of the stuff if we can, solve it. That's my take on it. I'll move that.
Thank you. Other comments and questions? Councillor Morton, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was able to go up and go through that building, and yes, there's a lot of stuff in there that probably could have been saved many, many years ago, but it's not actually, it's not something that would be saved now. And where, if anyone decides that they want to save it, where are we going to put it? We have got all kinds of buildings throughout our East Gwillimbury, and we don't need something else. And if the owner of the property is willing to have it moved, then I would support having it moved out.
Councillor Foster. Oh, and then I have Mr. Webster. Councillor Foster, go ahead.
So, Madam Mayor, I kind of have a long-winded comment about this one. So, part of me says that I think we probably could have done a better job and made it abundantly aware to everyone about this heritage home when we were talking about the earthworks some time ago. I think we kind of failed that one a little bit. I'm not sure how, but I think we did. So this is a very, very difficult situation for the Heritage Advisory Committee. I believe that everyone on the committee realizes that the development that's going in on this property is an excellent, excellent opportunity for the town of East Gwillimbury. The facility itself and the jobs that it's going to provide from construction on through to operation. But it's also very largely felt with the group that this is an example of deterioration from neglect. Apparently, it's a number of years since anyone lived in the building. Having said that, we all know that once there's no one living in a building like that and the heat's turned off and everything, deterioration does happen. we also realize that the majority of development companies are not in the business of being landlords to rent these buildings out and keep someone there. So during the tour that we had, I was actually surprised. I thought the building was going to be in worse shape than it is. But, you know, I mean, the roof line itself seems fairly solid. The most of the brick, I think, is okay. There's a few bad spots. A lot of the trim and doors are intact, and I think that goes along to what Councillor Percicini said, and I'm not so sure how easy it's going to be to remove all that stuff if we did try to save it. It's going to be dry, it's going to split, and it's going to crack. So it would be very, very difficult to save, but I can't speak for all of the heritage group, but I think maybe what we should be doing here is looking towards a better set of rules and regulations or policy and protocol as to how we don't let this happen again. We must have other properties that are owned by developers that may have listed houses on, and how do we step forward to stopping this from happening again? I believe that our developers want to be good community partners, and I think that maybe this might be a perfect example of a time where maybe we can get some direction through staff. Marco and his team can maybe help us out, and the Heritage Advisory Committee could certainly be involved in this on how to put some rules and regulations together on, like I said, how we stop this from happening. Maybe the owners of this property may step to the table and help us out with those policies and procedures so that we all can understand both sides. I think the developers maybe need to understand more how we're trying to save our heritage, but maybe we have a lot to learn too as to how the developer handles these situations. So again, just kind of an idea, and I would look forward to some of my colleagues or staff or Mr. Webster to kind of, you know, lead us along here. I mean, not every building can be saved, but we hate to lose these types of buildings, and I'm not sure what the proper answer is here.
Mr. Ramuno?
Through you, Madam Mayor. No, it's a good point, Councillor Foster. I know we've been struggling with this at our last few Heritage Advisory Committee meetings. I mean, the one thing I can say is I think in the new year, what we can focus on as a committee, if your council recalls, I guess it was last year, we had brought in some consultants to review our current list, heritage list of properties. And we identified you know, which properties should be maintained on the list. The other thing that our consultants identified was, I think out of those 300 odd properties that were on our list, they identified, I believe it was about 15 individual properties that warranted proceeding to being designated individually under Part 5. So I think as a Heritage Advisory Committee, maybe we could focus on that in the new year, working with those landowners, because that's the next step. If again they truly warrant being designated under Part 5, that's the next step in preserving those structures long term. The only other thing I could add with respect to this property, notwithstanding, you know, it is on our list, and the Heritage Committee was struggling, wanting it preserved. Our consultants, this wasn't one of those properties that was identified for, you know, consideration for to be individually designated, unfortunately. And I know the committee has visited it. I was out a couple months ago as well. You know, unfortunately, it is in rather rough shape. We did impose a number of conditions. One, that we would work with, you know, if council adopted recommendation 1, we would work with the applicant to see what we could, if there was anything to salvage within the building. And again, the other condition would be that, you know, we'd commemorate the Leopard House within the new development, there'd be a signage, and there are things that could be done with respect to how to commemorate the former structure, along with the other condition being the financial contribution that could assist the council and the committee in future heritage protection initiatives.
Thank you. Councillor Roy DeClemente and then Councillor Crone.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think Mr. Webster had his hand up as well, and before I make any comments, I'd like to hear what he has to say, if that's okay.
That's okay.
Madam Mayor, I'll defer and listen to council's comments if that's okay, and provide some oversight comments towards the end if that's, I think that might be more appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Roy DeClemente.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think I echo Councillor Foster's comments that, we continue to struggle with this each time they come to us. Sometimes they're easier decisions than others. And frankly, in this circumstance, I have to express that I'm disappointed. I feel that the landowner in this circumstance has shirked their responsibility towards this property. They've owned it for 14 years and have clearly not done anything to preserve or protect it from the elements. And in fact, they leased it out to another party for training purposes. And so for me, I think it's a textbook example of demolition by neglect. And I think that's what pains me the most about this. It's not that we have a site that's in transition, that's forward thinking, and we've got a tremendous opportunity for our community to bring the kinds of diversity of our economy to EG, and that's the positive side of it. But the sad side of it is that someone's let us down, and I feel that in supporting having it removed, I guess at this point I'd like further details on what that financial contribution would be. I think that there's a direct association with the Children of Peace, with Benjamin Leopard, who was an actual member of the Children of Peace. There's a connection there to the Sharon Temple, who are also in the midst of a project. And quite frankly, there's another developer in the community who's doing quite the opposite. In fact, they're spending almost $2 million at this point to try and do the right thing by a designated property. It's designated, not listed, but it's designated. And so, from this perspective, I want us to see if we can get creative. The other piece of it is if we do agree to have it removed, the bricks I think are best in place in that sense. I don't want to see them sitting on a skid somewhere where someone might or might not use them. I'd like to see them incorporated into the site, and that a clause be inserted into the site plan agreement for this site to incorporate those bricks into the facility or into the landscape in some fashion. But from my perspective, I would like a little bit more time to consider this and how we might best go forward with it. To Councillor Foster's point, I think there's three things. We have to anticipate that this is going to happen. We have to designate where it's appropriate. And I wanted to make another 8. So it was, enforce and 8, our property standards. And that's really what it comes down to, is enforcing our property standards by law, ensuring that those properties are maintained properly, or designate them where appropriate, but anticipate that this is going to happen. We know where these houses are, and we know in our official plan where the growth is going to happen and where the change is going to take place. And so how do we anticipate that? So that's where I'm at right now. I don't feel like I'm in a position to make a decision. I don't want to go against the recommendation of our Heritage Advisory Committee until I have a bit more information. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Crone.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. For you to staff, I'll just say that I think my colleagues, Councillor Foster and Councillor Roy DeClemente, have actually summed up a lot of my thoughts quite nicely, so I won't use up a lot of oxygen repeating what's been said before me. But and I certainly support Councillor Roy DeClemente's suggestion that maybe we pause this and defer it to a meeting in the new year when we've had some time to gather a little more information and ponder it a little while over some eggnog. But I guess my question is to Mr. Ramuno with regards to the structure. I know it's going to be difficult to based on what we know with the what's happening with the land, to keep it there. So that the only two other options are either we move it or we demolish it. So the question I have, and I drove by the structure today to have a look at it. The question on my mind is this building strong enough to be moved? Because and I'm not a structural engineer, but it looks fragile, and I don't know if it would survive a move. And then my next question is, does anyone want it? If we were to move it, does anyone want it? So, and we need to have a willing recipient. So just a couple of questions on top of what has already been said before me. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Through you, Madam Mayor, Councilor Crone. Yeah, the one challenge is with the site works and the grading that's going on out there. Once they're done, the house where it's currently located will be approximately 20 feet higher than the final grade of the future sort of business park area in the future distribution facility. So that is a challenge. And again, you're right, just about anything could be moved. It's a question of how much work would have to go into sort of stabilizing the structure before moving it. When I was out there, the bricks, the one facade will need to be, reinforced before it's moved. And again, the challenge is without having a final location, if it is moved, it would be, moved somewhere temporarily on site, and it may sit there for, a number of years. And we've seen that happen before final location is found and a proper sort of use, repurposing of the building, because we don't want to, see it sitting vacant again, because that no good comes of that, unfortunately. So that is a challenge, finding a location within that area, because it's being now graded and prepared for the the future employment uses, the large footprints and the amount of grading that's going on out there. It can't stay where it is.
And I think the unfortunate part is that these buildings were not built structurally to be moved. And we've seen that with some of the other ones that we've had, that they really they just aren't able to be moved or raised out of the cellar area, off the foundation that it has. It was never structurally built for that issue. At the end of the day, no one, of course, thought about it. There was somebody else that had their hand up. Was it Councillor Morton? Did you have your hand up?
I was just listening to everyone else, and as I said, I went through there, and at some point it might have been a wonderful looking building, but right now it's not. And I mean, even to walk through it was, you had to be very, very careful about where you were putting your foot down, because you could almost see it bouncing, and it was very wet when I was there. So the wood and everything else is getting very weak as well. And I don't know where you would move it and how you would move it, because taking a chance of someone getting hurt at the same time. I think at one time it was a very, very nice looking building, and but right now it just isn't, and it's I think sometimes an accident waiting to happen, and I still don't think that it's going to be able to be moved properly, or where is it going to go? And we certainly have many more throughout East Gwillimbury that's going to end up looking at the same way if we don't start sitting down and figuring out how we're going to get it looked after or moved, excuse me, or whatever. And I can't vote to move it or anything else. I think it just needs to be, it's going to be, as you're trying to move it, it will be get destroyed, unfortunately.
Councillor Persichini, go ahead, please.
We are advised by our staff that it needs to be removed, and I would agree with that. And maybe with some option of Councillor Wright implemented that she suggested what they could do for us. But it just needs to be removed and get rid of it. And with some option that I like what Tara said, maybe you can insert some, what the builders can do, or the owners for us. And I'm okay with us, but it needs to be removed. This, staff they're the experts. That's it. That's my motion.
Thank you. Questions, comments? Further thoughts? Go ahead, Councillor Roy DeClemente.
Through you to staff, I guess what I'm struggling with is we keep having we keep twisting ourselves into knots, being upset that this happened, and it keeps happening. And I guess what I think Councillor Foster was of the same mind. How do we stop this from happening again? And while we understand logically and we support in principle that this house has to be removed, that there needs to be some kind of repercussion for having let it get to the state where it cannot be moved or protected or preserved. And what sorts of mechanisms can we put in place to make sure this doesn't happen again? And I think this is where this may be kind of the touch point for, at least for me, that says, okay, enough of this. Oh gosh, we're going to wring our hands again about this. Let's find a way to make sure this doesn't keep happening to us and to our heritage in the community. So I guess that's where I'm sort of leaning is, what do we do now? And we acknowledge that it has to be removed in principle, but I'm reluctant to issue that demolition permit without having all of the details.
Thank you. Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I'll just go a little bit further on Councillor Roy DeClemente's thought process there. I'm not sure that maybe we're ready to vote as a council before we know what type of a monetary donation that's mentioned in lieu of might be. Are we voting to take a house off the list and have it demolished for $15,000, or are we doing it for $500,000? There's a big difference there, and I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth as we move forward. But again, I think that there's lots of blame to go around here, and maybe we need to step up and change the way we do things.
Thank you. Go ahead. Thank you. Mr. Webster.
So Madam Mayor, I could offer some perspectives now that, and I have been listening closely to the discussion. So I default to the strategic plan that this council put in place, and actually is our last meeting of 21. We've touched on a lot of it tonight. We've touched on the environment and how that's an important pillar, an element. Our inclusivity and diversity agenda we touched on tonight. And another key theme that I recall was economic development and attracting employment. And, we've all done a very good job of maybe what's considered the easy stuff, the residential side. And we've become a residential growth center in York Region. But council certainly said, we've got to become an employment center, and we've got to get our employment land serviced, and we've got to start attracting quality jobs. And so I start off by saying that this proposal, if the developer hadn't been aggressive, we'd be looking at a farm with a dilapidated house on it, no servicing proposal or no employment. Instead, we're looking at the largest investment in our employment corridor and the biggest job creator in town history. So I go into it with a lens, though, that it's about balance. And I also go into it by looking at the 3 lessons that I've learned. We've had 3 of these houses in my tenure here. We've had the radial house that Mayor Haxon, you and I walked through when they put the Highway 404 in, that had significant history. It was moved to Sharon, west of our building, and the developer that moved it got over 100 units of allocation for that. And that's what's allowed the townhomes to the northwest of our property to be built. And, you know, it's been a success. I don't know when you drive by on Mount Albert Road if people are celebrating the heritage of that building necessarily. But, you know, that was an investment made by the group. The other 2 I look at, and it touches on points every councillor has made tonight. The Howard House that sits still on the Green Lane corridor was designated by this council, designated under the Act over 10 years ago. And I think it might even have been longer. It has a willing host. The Sharon Temple is willing to accept it. It still hasn't been moved. And the price tag, as Councillor Roy DiClemente just outlined, is now north of $2 million to move it. And it becomes who wants to move these facilities. And part of the challenge we have is to protect these houses that are in the middle of 100-acre farms is a real challenge for all of us. And you see it all over Southern York region when they're sitting on posts and beams and they're just rotting away, waiting for a secondary use. Our third house that we designated is out on Yonge Street across from the Lowe's Plaza, and it's been fraught with vandalism and other elements. And I believe we recently allowed it to be approved to be moved once the Upper York gets approved, which is, again, a timeline that's not too coherent. So, you know, to my mind, the challenge we have before us is these homes that are in the middle of large redevelopments. I think council's making a very strategic decision by saying districts is the way to go. If you really want to start preserving houses, and Aurora is a wonderful example, and Marco knows that Aurora celebrates its heritage districts and the houses because they're all on one street. They're on several streets in the downtown core, and they're easy to protect. And people, the next use is a residential use. It's the use that you sell it for. It's a real challenge for the developer. I believe there was a major oversight, and this has been that when we did the earthworks agreement, this should have been cited. We're now finding out that this house was right in the middle of where they need to build, where they need to grade. And the decision before council is actually, it isn't to move it. The decision before council tonight is actually a simple one. It's A, to designate, or B, to issue the demolition permit. That's what we have 30 days to do. And I think the developer, from talking to them, what they're saying is to move it is problematic. They'd be prepared to move it to an interim site somewhere on their location and spend some dollars and let's figure out what we do with it. However, the number that I've discussed at least is to even do interim moves of significance is about 50,000, and to start looking at moving houses without any kind of upgrades in that, you're talking about 150,000. And I believe what's on the table for council to discuss is if they allow it to be demolished, a contribution for heritage purposes in the amount of about 150,000 to be made to the town to direct to heritage assessment and analysis and good heritage uses. And the discussion that occurred tonight that I think has some real merit would be to salvage as much as possible from the house. And even industrial areas have parks. They have places where employees can gather, they can go for lunches. There is going to be a park or a gathering area there, and to reuse the bricks and some of the other more significant items to maybe put a memorial type of park, and memorial's maybe not the right word, a tribute park to the homeowner and to the Leopard family. So I just table that deferring it probably isn't the best option at this point. I don't think it solves much. The decision before council actually is designate I don't know if that's going to be a popular thing, but I think if direction was made to staff to put together a package that include demolition, but with a significant $150,000 contribution for heritage purposes, reuse of the materials, and direction to staff to come back with some better policies about protecting and maintaining and not letting these situations recur might be advisable. So I put that on the table. I don't think that's the report's recommendations, but it would be sort of a modified approach to move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Webster. Comments? Councillor Crothers, go ahead, please.
Thank you. I've been listening along to my colleagues' comments and staff's comments on this for quite a while now, and I know this has come up before. But just as kind of a pause for thought and a bit of a reflection, that the amount of time that we spend looking at preserving houses that were built, the same people who built this house also built hedgerows around their farm. They planted gardens, they planted trees, and we don't blink an eye at getting those all knocked down and bulldozed down. But when it comes to the house, suddenly it takes up a lot of council's time, and there's a lot of hand wringing over, destroying the house that was built. I just wish that there was just a little bit more time spent, debating about the hedgerows and the gardens and the trees that were planted by the same people who built the house. So that's just my comment and reflection. I will go along with whatever my colleagues feel on this one. Thank you.
Councillor Crothers, your comment to me means that what you've just mentioned about the gardens and the hedgerows, that was what made it a home. It was a house, and that's what made it a home for families for 100 and some odd years.
So hopefully we can think a little bit about that before we get down to just the house, that all the stuff that went around it, the hedgerows that have been destroyed around East Gwillimbury in the last number of years, bring a tear to my eye, because those were planted by the people who came before us, and we don't blink an eye to have those taken down. And to me, those mean more to me personally than the bricks and mortar. So I just hope that we can reflect a little bit more on other things that were built by the people who came here before us. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Mr. Webster has certainly given us food for thought. Are there any thoughts on moving in that direction? Councillor Roy DeClemente, go ahead, please.
A reference was made to 30 days. When was the application submitted?
Mr. Maruno?
Through you, Madam Mayor, the demolition permit was just submitted December 10th. And so there's 60 days under the act for council to consider designation. So, but again, just considering the work that's going on out there, trying to find a suitable location, and if it was to be moved temporary, it's going to take some time and some dollars on part of the applicant as well.
So if we decide to wait, and I acknowledge that Mr. Webster suggests that's not what staff's recommendation is, but if we decide to wait, we would be referring it to the January 11th council meeting. And so we would still be within our 60 days of limitation under the Act. Is that correct?
Mr. Webster?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to retract my 30 days comment. Okay, I'd like to have proper information on the table. I was advised 30 days. Okay, and so 60 days is different and correct. So if that's the case, council has every right to request more information, and maybe rather than dealing with this on the fly, which was unfortunate, as I was initially, I think, advised 30 days. Maybe it was my own misunderstanding. We could report to the first council meeting in January with a revised proposal that maybe packages this up in a more coherent manner and allows for council to make a decision other than the one tonight. The one before you tonight is designate or allow the demolition. It would be a compromise position in the middle that we could bring forward to the first meeting in January.
Members of council, do you need time to think about this over the holidays? Are there decisions that people have in their minds already? I just put that out. If it's the same, if we're going to have the same outcome in January, I'm fine with that. I just think and sometimes we just need to have more thought process ourselves. But I can tell you that I don't want to go through these houses. I've been on council for 21 years, and there's probably been 10 houses. I find it heart-wrenching. And Councillor Crothers, when you talk about the trees and the flower beds and whatever, this was somebody's home, but it's no one's home now. Right. And we are charged with the task of deciding what happens with this home. You want to be respectful and caring because you know that it was built and lived in with love, but the end result is what we see, and without any difference, every house that comes to us is in the same condition that we're talking about here now. It's demolition by neglect, and for a variety of reasons. Sometimes it was intentional, sometimes it simply sat. We've got houses that I think we have I won't say designated, but decided it wasn't going to be torn down. And there's a few of them around the town that they're still sitting in the same place because this council, not us here tonight, but councils in past years struggled. And I know how everybody here is thinking. It's a terrible decision to be made. How do we end up with respect for the families that came through there? And I think there's 5 different families that came through that house. How do we deal with respect for them and for that house? And I struggle with it every time we have one of these houses. I've been through them, each one that has come before us at least once, and sometimes I go back a second time. It's heart-wrenching. It really is. We are human beings and we are caring. We care for our community, and this is something that is a huge struggle for everyone. And I would say for staff as well, I don't want to continue to deal with these kinds of houses over and over again as we continue to have development here. But we have nothing in our tool chest right now to make it any different. So I think we had a suggestion to come back to our January meeting. I don't know if that's going to make any difference to anybody's thinking, but perhaps it would give an opportunity for staff as well to take a look at what could we do that would be meaningful and respectful of the families, with some of the archives from this building. And they all have them, the 12-foot trim around the floor and some flooring and those kinds of things, a shutter, whatever the case may be. There are artifacts that are in every building, but we need to do a better job of selecting what we need. Perhaps it's someone who has has some knowledge and experience, and then determine how somewhere within this property that we respect the community, respect the family that was here in the community. Councillor Foster.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. And I think if we are going to wait until mid-January, I think we would probably help council make a final decision. Again, if we knew what sort of a donation was going to be made, if we knew that there was a plan on how the saved bricks and what kind of a structure, a shade structure, as Mr. Webster mentioned, and maybe a tribute to the house and the family. If we had that idea, I think it might make it a little easier for us to make the final decision.
Thank you. Mr. Webster?
So Madam Mayor, we're trying to balance a number of agendas, okay? And we can defer it. I think what the deferral will be is that the number that I've tabled is the number that's reasonably been put on right now, is 150,000 to town heritage purposes. I'll give council a little bit of an idea. When I first started as a CAO many years ago, a developer came and knocked down a heritage house. And at that time, our CBO enforced the maximum penalty under the Act, which was double the demolition permit fine. It was $3,000. And that was sent to the Heritage Committee, and they mailed it back to us pretty quickly. So, you know, I think the 150,000 has some significance. I think to ask us between now and January 17th or 18th, our first meeting, to come up with a perfect plan for how the house resources may get utilized in a tributary manner. I think really what we could do is put a motion together that would delegate that to staff. You know, even tonight, Mike Molinari has sent to me, there's going to be a pumping station there. And, you know, it's a very visible building. But maybe the bricks and some of the resources could be reused there. Maybe we should be saying something that the assets and resources within that house, and not the hedgerows, unfortunately, and the other landscaping elements, but be reutilized within that development to the greatest extent possible. And staff will ensure that happens. I believe we just had some bricks reused up in our Queensville Park rebuild. And people question that at the beginning, but it's actually a very aesthetic development for that park. So I don't know how much we're going to move the yardsticks in a month by deferring it. And at the same time, I know that we know that there's some time sensitivity to this employment proposal, because you know, the earthworks are underway, and delaying it could be problematic for a 4 to 5 week delay. So I would table to council that we could bring forward Councillor Persicini's original motion, which was to look for a compromise here and add a little bit to it tonight. I don't think personally, and unless another member of the senior leadership team does, that our recommendation will greatly change between tonight and the first meeting of council in mid-January.
Mr. Webster, what is the exact date of our first meeting in January?
I'll ask the clerk, but I know we have a workshop on the 11th. Okay, and we could add a council element to that, but the technical first working council session is
January 18th.
18th.
Well, that certainly gives us an option if we have a workshop prior. Might be better. Councilor Persicini?
Can we do the motion, like I said, in principle, and put the 150,000 plus utilize all those bricks or the baseboard, like you said, to, you know, when they're doing all the construction there, so everybody wins, and the money, 150,000 goes towards the heritage, whatever. So kind of structured that way in principle and get things going. I mean, we spent already an hour and a half, and we still know this is ridiculous. Okay, that's my take. So let's make a decision in principle. Let's put it down at what everybody's saying and let's get it done.
So Councillor Persicini has provided a motion. Madam Clerk, could you?
Through you, Madam Mayor, just bear with me for a moment. I'm just going to pull up the motion and the additional context that was discussed.
Can everyone see that and read it? Would you like me to read it, or can you see it yourselves? Okay, I'm getting nods that everyone can see it.
Madam Mayor, could I suggest that it's more than bricks that are being salvaged, it's any materials within the house that can be reused.
That's good. Yep.
With heritage value.
With heritage value, and it's within our community. I don't think we want to necessarily see a salvager come in and be selling the baseboards to somebody in Kingston.
That's
I'd
right.
like to see it left on the site, not elsewhere in town, that it has to be a future reuse on the site.
Yep.
I agree.
And not for the sewage treatment plant.
I think if there's a park within this area, that probably would be the most reflective for people. Okay, can everybody read it?
Mhm.
Okay, and that is moved by Councillor Persicini. Do we have a seconder for this motion?
Yeah.
Okay. Councillor Morton, were you seconding this motion?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Any questions? All those in favor? Hands up, please. I have 2.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'm just going to remove the screen for a second. Bear with me.
Thank you.
There.
Okay, there we are. Okay, all those in favor of the motion before us? I have 2. Against? That fails. Okay, so what is it that people would like to do at this point? Do we have some idea, particularly for those that could not support the last motion? Do you have some idea of what you might be able to support? Councillor Crone, go ahead.
Madam Mayor, if I may, I think we defer this to January 11th, and perhaps some of us that are concerned about this, we could liaise with members of staff and push for what we think might be an amicable solution.
I'm fine with that. Is that the wish of members of council? I have a motion to that effect, Councillor Crone. Madam Clerk.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I was just going to try my best to provide you with a motion that council could consider.
Be it resolved, the Development Services Planning Branch P2 2021-34 dated December 14th, 2021 regarding a request for removal from the Registry of the Register of Cultural Heritage Properties be referred to the January 11th, 2022 Council Workshop meeting, and the Council requests that staff include additional information with respect to financial contributions, plans for salvaging any materials with heritage value where possible for the future reuse on site, and the plans to commemorate the site, and that council requests that staff in conjunction with the Heritage Advisory Committee provide an update with respect to opportunities that aim to protect and preserve heritage properties. Do I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Crone, you're moving that. Thank you. And do I have a seconder? Councillor Roy DiClemente. Thank you. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. There. Okay. So that concludes item number P2. We are on legal and council support services at this point. We might need some legal help.
I think you're doing fine, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Horner.
Just one item on the agenda this evening, Madam Mayor, where staff are proposing some changes to your meeting schedule for 2022, and Madam Clerk will be happy to give you the highlights.
Thank you, General Manager Horner. Through you, Madam Mayor, the purpose of this memorandum is to advise Council of some changes proposed to the 2022 schedule, specifically the inclusion of a special council meeting to take place at 5 p.m. on January 18th, and in order to deal with the closed session matter. In addition, staff have reviewed the in order to essentially reduce the gap between the March 1st meeting and the last meeting in March, staff is proposing to perhaps move that meeting to March 8th. We have reviewed the meeting to ensure that it does not conflict with any March breaks or any other events of significance. And additionally, to remove the September 13th Council Education Workshop, this is essentially to allow staff to be able to focus on election-related activities. Following the release of the Multi-Faith Action Society's diversity calendar by the region that was distributed on November 19th, we have also took the initiative to review the calendar and wanted to make sure that some of the days, wanted to advise council that some of the days were actually conflicting with certain events of observance. And you know, what we have done within the body of the memorandum, we've identified about 5 of the particular dates, including the municipal election date, that would essentially require some form of a religious accommodation. And should council wish to review these days and advise of any wishes to cancel or move those dates, staff can certainly look into changing them. Otherwise, they would be definitely recognized as part of those particular council meetings. I'm happy to answer any questions or take any comments at this time.
Thank you. Questions? I'm not seeing any at this time. I have a resolution. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Councillor Roy DiClemente.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to staff, the municipal election day falling on Diwali and a couple of other important days, what sorts of religious accommodations might we be contemplating, or would we be in a position to do? The municipal election is set by the province through legislation, so we can't move the date. But what sorts of things can we do to accommodate that? Is it promoting advanced polling, or what sorts of tools are in our tool chest?
Through you, Madam Mayor, that's certainly a topic that is being discussed all across the region at this time, and that is certainly an opportunity for us to further promote the advanced vote days to ensure that we can accommodate for individuals that may not be able to participate on October 24th, 2022, which is our election date. We have not had any communication in terms of directions from the province regarding that particular date. However, as council may know, the Municipal Elections Act determines that the fourth Monday of the month in October would be deemed as election date. I don't believe that it was an intentional decision that was made by the province. However, it does fall on that date, and we will be doing lots of communication to ensure that we can attract individuals to participate as part of the early voting days.
We have a motion in front of us here. Be it resolved that Legal and Counsel Support Services Clerk's Branch Memorandum dated December 14th, 2021, entitled Revised 2022 Council Meeting Schedule be received. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Foster, Councillor Crone. Questions? All those in favor? And that's carried. Mr. Horner, is there anything else under Legal and Counsel Support Services?
Nothing else on the agenda this evening, Madam Mayor, but very happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions of Mr. Horner at this time? I'm not seeing any. We'll move along. Thank you. Item R is Council Committees, Board and Groups, Arts and Culture Advisory Committee Report 2021-01 Procurement of Art under the Town of East Gwillimbury's Art Policy. And Councillor Roy DeClemente, did you want to speak to this?
Certainly, Madam Mayor. Just a bit of context for you. The Arts and Culture Advisory Committee, now that our public art policy is in place, would like to start using it. We have a couple of locations throughout the community that have been identified as locations through CPRC for public art. And the committee has done a site visit at the new Children of Peace Park. There are 2 spots in the park the park was actually designed to host public art. And so in order to be able to finish off that park, it makes sense to commission or to go to market to see what kinds of art we can bring in and commission. We do have funds in reserves for public art. I believe there's about $250,000. They're not going to spend all of that, but there are funds available to them under the policy, and so they're simply seeking council's endorsement to work with our own staff to prepare a request for proposals and go and see what's out there. Nothing would be commissioned or committed to without further reporting to council, but they're really just seeking council's blessing to move forward with trying to get some art in a new park.
Wonderful. Any questions, comments? I'm not seeing any. Do I have a mover and seconder for the resolution? Councillor Persicini, Councillor Crone. All those in favor? And that's carried. Do we have anything else under council committee or boards and groups? Seeing no other ones, we're at S, which is correspondence for consideration. We have none at this time. We are down to bylaws. We have 2 bylaws. First one is a bylaw 2021-108, being a bylaw to appoint an assistant deputy fire chief. We've met Richard Deerstruff already this evening. Could I have a mover and a second? Oh, actually, I'll do both of them at the same time. And then the second one is a bylaw 2021-109, being a bylaw to appoint a fire chief, Robert McKenzie. Be it resolved that bylaws 2021-108 and 2021-109 be taken as read and acted and signed by the mayor and municipal clerk. Any questions on these? I have a mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Morton and Councillor Persicini. All those in favor? And that's carried. Item U is our other business, and that's workshop topics. We've added one already. We didn't even get there to this part, and we've already added to it. So it's regarding January the 11th, Economic Development Strategy and Information Technology IT Strategy Update. And then, of course, we're going to be dealing with heritage houses. Any questions on that at all? Okay, seeing none, I will move to item V and a confirming bylaw. Be it resolved that bylaw 2021-110, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council meeting being held on December 14th, 2021, be taken as read and acted and signed by the mayor and municipal clerk. All those in favor? That's carried. And an adjournment. As this is our final meeting for 2021, normally we would have been out for dinner or to do something a little different. We were unfortunately unable to, but I would like to wish everyone a very Merry Christmas, a happy holidays, and the best for 2021. Thank you very much. And could I have a mover and seconder to adjourn our meeting tonight? Councillor Crone, Councillor Foster, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. I'm sure we'll see each other over the holidays. We may be adjourned from council, but I'm sure that we'll be seeing people during the month of December and early January. Thank you very much. Have a great evening.
Merry Christmas.